Selectboard to order on November 15, 2021. First of all, thank you all for being with us this evening. If you go to use the microphone after being recognized, please let us know your name, where you live, and then everyone who's watching this on television, which we thank you for doing so, will be able to understand what's going on. So this is being recorded, and we do thank CTSB for doing so. If anyone in the room would like to also record the meeting, you may do so just after notifying the chair. So our first order of business is approval of meeting minutes. We have two sets, 10/28 and 11/1 for this year.
I'll make a motion that we approve the working meeting minutes of October 28th and the working meeting minutes of November 1st, 2021. As written.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The second order is a discussion, possible action on something we've been talking about for maybe about a month now, the placement of a mum bed or Elizabeth Freeman statue. And with that, I'd like to welcome to the podium Julie Hannum, who is the council chair for Old Parish Church, and also Paul O'Brien, who is the president of the Sheffield Historical Society. It looks like Paul is going to stay seated until needed, and let Julie proceed. So Julie, just in case not everyone is up to date on this, could you just give us a smidge of background and then tell us where we are now?
A smidge of background. That should be Paul's because he was at any rate, State Representative Smitty Pignatelli had approached the Historical Society, Berkshire Taconic First Congregational Church, and the town about the placement and installation of a statue that would honor Elizabeth Mumfett Freeman, the first African American to seek freedom in the country, in Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, yes. So there have been numerous conversations. I know Smitty has been here at Town Hall several times, and one of the points is that in looking at the placement, Smitty, as well as the sculptor, and the background on the sculptor, Brian, I forget his last name, but I don't know his background that well, but has been a sculptor for many, many different organizations, and most recently Smitty met him with the unveiling of the Susan B. Anthony statue in North Adams. That's when Smitty got the idea. They're honoring a local heroine, and we have a local heroine here in South Berkshire, namely Elizabeth Freeman, and why not do that? And looking at locations, they were talking about Ashley Falls at the Ashley House, where she was a slave for John Ashley. Of course, she is buried within the Sedgwick Pie. It was Theodore Sedgwick who owned the home across the street. That was her lawyer when she was seeking freedom. So there's been many locations, and Smitty was continually coming back to what he called this quad between the Historical Society, the church, in front of town government, and across the street from the Sedgwick House. And where that lands is pretty much on property of the First Congregational Church. Therefore, that's why as the council chair, I am here representing the church. There was a time back, I believe it was 1999, that the church gave an easement to the town when the new sidewalk was erected. It doesn't feel like new right now since it's 21 years old or 20 years old, but that was a big deal at the time, giving an easement to the town to put in the new sidewalk. And at that point, a lamp post was erected on that site, and it is the site of our town tree. So Old Parish Church, in our easement, it stated that we have to have permission from the town to make any alterations to that easement. And therefore, first our congregation had a meeting on November 7th. We had a full call with announcements. It has a town process similar to town government, where we have a process to do that. And we voted in the affirmative to allow the placement of the statue on that town property within that same easement area. contingent on working out details with all of our partners, the town, the Historical Society, Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation, etc. So I'm here tonight basically to give you that update that we have voted in the affirmative. We are ready to move forward on that. We did like the location where that town tree was. We felt it was a very prominent location in the center of town. And we've also gotten permission from Mass DOT through Smitty's office that we could move the town tree back to the town green where it was for many, many, many years for those who have been in town for that duration. So we have that. We come forward. We need to work out on some of the details. The church has some questions on language of our easement we'd like to work with the town on. We have liability questions. And one of the biggest questions, I think, at this point is who will own this statue? We know that within this easement, the town maintains care of that sidewalk and that light post. And this statue will be in that same area. So one of the biggest questions, is liability insurance, which all expenses of this statue will be covered by a very large fundraising campaign that Smitty is working on and unveiling with Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation. And there will be, we called it an endowment, but Paul tells me it's called an agency fund set up at Berkshire-Taconic that will pay all expenses. So it's on church property, but it's within the town easement. So, well, the first question is, who's going to own this and where will the umbrella of liability fall? And then how do we work out the details of care for perpetuity and all of those things? Again, none of which should fall on the shoulders of the taxpayer if the town puts it under the liability insurance of the town, or on the church or the Historical Society, however that works. Those are really kind of that's the first real question we have to figure out. And then of course, we know we need to seek written approval from you to alter. That's language in the easement, so we have to, I would assume you would want something in writing from us seeking that change. I don't have that for you tonight. And do you need something regarding the placement of the town tree at the same time? So tonight's sort of an update, and it's to get direction on how you would like to proceed, whether it's with a working group, whether it is the formality of coming back weekly, bi-weekly with various updates. What is it that you need? We have the affirmative in our place, and now we're back to you seeking direction of what the town needs to move forward. And I would ask my colleague in crime here, Paul O'Brien, anything that we want to add to at this point?
Paul O'Brien, the president of the Historical Society, and our board has unanimously supported this as to move this forward. So we're the fiduciary agent. So the money, we're using our 501c3 through the Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation. This is a fund of the Berkshire-Taconic Community Foundation. I want to add that the statute, which many of you have seen, there will be, and it's not situated in this image, there will be two pillars, which will be approximately 34 inches up. That would be big. 34 inches up on an angle. There'll be two of them. There'll be a brass plaque on each one of them. And on the brass plaque, one brass plaque will tell the story of Mom Beth. The other brass plaque will tell the story of Elizabeth Brigham. So those will be added to it. And Julie and I have been talking about, and Smitty as well, protecting the back area of it, the back corner, rather than putting it directly up against the sidewalk, which would be really nice. But we know the reality of a snow blower or a small plow coming through there in the winter, slipping and sliding, and we don't want to get it dinged. So the idea has come up that in that corner, we put some sort of granite, because the pillars would be granite that we're going to have, some sort of granite
Posts.
Yeah, posts, I guess, and that's to be determined. But that would help to protect that from any damage from a snowplow or a snow blower or any other activity like that. And I don't think we talked about moving the bench.
Yes,
The church-
yes.
church
The
bench.
church, the bench that's there now belongs to the church. We will easily find a new home for that bench on church property. So it's our vision that it would just simply be the lamp post, which we wish to keep, and the statue, these pillars, and then protective posts as needed, or however that works out in the design. And I think, just to open the point of conversation, we talked about, the posts to protect from any kind of snow plowing or snow removal. That is one point within our easement that we wish to clarify, because our easement does state that the church would bear no expense of or use from that easement. And it does strike me that it is an expense to maintain a sidewalk, and it appears in the language that I interpret that means the town should be plowing that sidewalk between the stone store and the church. So that will be a point that we need to seek clarification on.
Okay, so let's first of all just see if the board or anyone at this table, Rhonda, Jill, has any questions, and then I'm going to open it up to those who are here to see if you have any questions. So Bob, Martin, Rhonda, Jill, any questions?
Just a quick comment. Go ahead.
No, I have none.
Okay, just a quick comment. So Smitty said DOT will take down the dying or dead tree and put the holiday tree wherever we want it.
After this current holiday season.
Correct.
Okay, so we're going to get to the tree in a moment.
In a moment, yeah. And actually, those expenses are being donated by Whalen.
Right.
Yeah,
Ambulance.
and then after we see if there's any questions from members here, the audience, then the board is going to come back and discuss how we move this forward, okay? So let's see if there's any questions from anyone who is here on this matter. George?
George O'Lane, Foley Road. I'm just wondering why this statue's in Sheffield when Mom Bet started in Ashley Falls and ended up in Stockbridge.
You'll have to direct that, Julie or Paul?
Sure. I think Smitty came up with this idea. He, as Julie was saying, thought it would be a place of prominence to have it in the center of Sheffield, that more people would see it in the center of Sheffield, that it would be visible to the people who came through our town. Near the church, where she stood in the back of the church, we believe, when she was a slave, when Colonel Ashley was a member of the congregation, and across the street from Sedgwick, who gave her freedom. So that we feel that, and I think Smitty and the church, we all feel it's an area of prominence, high prominence.
So I think the other issue is that we need to remember that this is church land. There's a tiny speck of one corner, a strip, I think, that is town land, but I believe from what you have said before, Julie, that this entire statue can be placed on church land.
We have identified the northeast corner of our property, which is on the green side of the sidewalk toward the center of town, which is where we would put that. The easement is the sidewalk and the parking areas that run along in front of our property.
Okay, so it's basically church property.
It is church property, yes.
Therefore, the town.
But we've granted that area
Yes.
in an easement to the
Yes.
town.
Okay. So, George, I don't know if that answers your question. If not, maybe you can talk with Paul and Julie or Smitty after the meeting. Okay. Martin, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I did. The reason she's buried in Stockbridge is because she essentially became a member of the Sedgwick family out of just filial sentiments and so forth, given all the work that Sedgwick did for her freedom.
So are there any other questions of the audience? We have the drivers of this movement minus Smitty here, so this is a good chance to clarify any points on this.
I could just clarify a little bit more for George on his question, because that was a point that was vetted quite significantly among the church members in the congregation as well, in terms of where it should be properly placed and those sorts of things. In the end, the church vote was unanimous to put it in this location. I should add that, by our membership when we allowed that.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'm going to bring it back to the board. And Rhonda, do you have some thoughts before we ask other board members? I mean, you know, it always comes down to the paperwork and the legal, it seems, and that's where we are, it
Yeah.
seems. So I think the main thing is that we just want to assure that the funds raised are supposed to and will pay for any expenses incurred by the town. We're not looking to use town money, taxpayer money to support this. So Rhonda, how do you think we should proceed?
Well, I think Julie had a great comment on the church is sending a letter over requesting permission. We'll kind of get the ball started. And then we would decide on use of legal. If the town's not going to pay for it, are you planning on using town council, or should separate council be hired?
I don't know. I think if we work off of Rhonda's thought, I think anything that is of concern on this issue, you mentioned the easement, you mentioned who's going to own the statue. I personally would prefer to have the church and Paul and Smitty, you guys have been so devoted to this, put together the questions at a start that you think need to be answered by the town, and send it over to the town, because I don't think we want to do is drib and drab one question at a time, okay? So, and then we'll let Rhonda run with it, and she'll probably talk to council on this matter and find out whether we use other council or our own and just bill it separate, and what other things need to be discussed. But let's try and get this question group together and get it over to Rhonda when you want to. The plan, I think, was to go through the holiday season with the current tree where it is, and then I know Smitty is very interested in a dedication around August, a particular day in August of 2022. August 22nd, 21st? 21. And this, of course, would go with the section of the Route 7 that's named after Mom Bet. Elizabeth Freeman was her taken name after slavery. So does this sound like a plan? What else do we want to add?
Good plan.
I think it works.
What about Julie's suggestion of a working group to work on this, or do you want this back in front of the board at all of your meetings, twice a month?
I think back in front of the board would be,
So would you repeat what you said?
Whether there should be a working group or whether it should come back in front of the board at their regular meetings, and they would prefer to do it at their regular meetings.
Okay.
I don't know who can do one more working group. Okay. I'm sorry, we're all, I think, worked out. So, I mean, it will receive attention, but I think, Rhonda can put the answers, and then I think it's important for the town to know how this is proceeding as things come up. So I would prefer to have it a normal meeting or a working meeting. All of the prior meetings with Smitty, Rhonda, Julie, and Paul were all posted as working meetings, so that's another place where this can take place, where everyone is free to come. So let's avoid the working group for the time being. I think you all can put the questions together the best. And Smitty has gone through this, I believe, or has a colleague in John Barrett that he can talk with as to what were all the particulars, though that was on town land. So it's a number of the same things.
Right, yes, I was going to say, it's in Adams, so, I'm sure we can find out from the town of Adams.
Yeah.
It is on town land. How does that work? It has similar structure, so, whether it can fall under town liability, and then the church, the historical society will work to maintain. Paul and I have put our heads together in terms of some ideas of a memorandum of agreement and that sort of thing, so we can bring that forward.
Well, we always have to all remember that at some point, everybody that's here isn't going to be. So this perpetuity issue
Absolutely.
needs to have a foundation that can in fact be in perpetuity. And I don't
Yes.
know that that's assigned to any one person or group, so,
So we have addressed that, and we've addressed that with Berkshire Taconic.
yes.
And it will be a representative from the Historical Society and a representative from the Old Parish Church. There'll be a fund established for that, for the continual support of any maintenance issues. You know, if a windstorm came through and damaged something, so there'd be money there, but the church and the Historical Society have to sign off on that. And in that money as well, should we raise enough, and we hope that we will, we're hoping to have a annual scholarship to a Mount Everest student come out of that money as well, a Mom Bet scholarship.
Okay, so we'll wait to hear back from you, particularly the questions that you have or issues that need to be resolved, sent to Rhonda, and I think the ball is in your court at the present time. So before you leave, let's just take up I just want to make sure there's no additional questions regarding the statute of Mumbet from the board or from Rhonda. We're good?
I'm good.
Okay, so discussion regarding the location for the holiday tree. I know this is on church land, but is the board in a position that they would like to endorse the proposed placement of a new tree after this holiday season to be where, what would you describe that, Julie, where the dying maple is?
That's an elm.
In that first area, it's the middle tree near the setting bench. Honestly, I don't know. There is a very distressed tree in that area, and that is the area we were talking about. And it would be this side, it would be our side of Route 7, so it should be far enough away from the salt of the highway and that sort of thing. How do we describe that location?
Kinda like-
I think the tree is an elm.
It is.
It is.
It is a what?
An elm.
It's
Oh, that's so sad, but they have such a problem.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody could put a little ribbon around it or something to let people know if they drive by that that's the tree that we're talking, or you're talking about,
Okay.
that DOT has approved. So does the board want to make any comment on this, or is this outside of our hands since this is on church land? I think it's probably outside of our hands, or what? I'm looking to you, Rhonda, to help
Well,
us.
it's on Mass DOT property.
Right.
Right. And if Smitty is working out the details with Mass DOT, as long as you approve it, the location, if you're happy with it, I think it kind of is out of our hands at this point.
I'd make a motion to approve the site where the dead elm or the dying elm is.
I'll second that.
Okay, and hopefully we won't move it until we have DOT. It won't be moved by a volunteer until, it's not going to be moved. It won't be replaced in the new position because it's not going to be moved. The physical tree isn't going to be moved. Okay, so we have a motion of endorsement. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you very
much.
much.
Thank you.
All right.
Let's go on to our next item, which is discussion possible action regarding Polakoff Road intersection design. So, at a recent meeting, we've had a number of letters, particularly emails from Sam Salazar. The board has read both of his recent emails, and his concern about trucks. That's a lot of people's concern in that area, speeding. The concern also about the intersection with Polakoff and Clayton. And then also, I think lastly, concern about the design that was proposed, I think was at our last meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
To kind of do a right turn only, come back around, and so that kind of was not perceived to be very effective. So we just put this back on the agenda to kind of give the board an opportunity to reflect on comments that he has provided us, as well as other members of the community. One thing we spent time talking about at our last meeting was the thought that a four-way stop sign would be negative on the community because of brakes and all the rest of it, which I know Bob said, no, it won't be that bad. And Sam agrees with you on that he would much rather see that in that neighborhood, and I guess he lives right there on one of those corners, than the proposed solution that we and the highway superintendent came up with. So I think I'd like to just ask the board members for their comments, and then I think there's a couple members who live in that neighborhood who I'd like to give them an opportunity to make some comments.
You want to start? Want me to start? I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Okay. Well, a large part of the commentary has been, can we ban truck traffic, in that neighborhood? And I did look over the information on what it takes to prohibit truck traffic on certain roads. And it was a very generic but pretty detailed approach to what the town would have to do to limit truck traffic. But then I also looked at, Sheffield is a right to farm community. If we were to ban, and I'm not saying that I propose it or that I support banning trucks, but even if we were to do so, agricultural vehicles would still be permitted to use those roadways under our right to farm bylaws. That's my interpretation of it. It seems to make a lot of sense. Again, I'm not necessarily in favor of banning truck traffic. I do appreciate that a four-way stop might work as far as the traffic itself, but I still agree with you, Renee, that it's probably going to be detrimental to those people that live right there. We did take a vote about doing these alterations, including that sort of forced right turn from Polycoff onto Clayton Road. And yes, it does involve a little bit of machination for the driver there, but we also proposed that as a solution that we might need to change. In other words, we were going to give it a try, see how it worked out, and then make a decision in early, I think it was in January, to go forward. So that's kind of where I am with these issues.
Okay. I think it should be brought up that there was a conflict of interest statement in here against myself because I do drive truck through that area. There is no conflict of interest because it would not pertain to my truck because I only use it to get sand for bedding for a dairy farm. So I would be under the right to farm law. So there would be no change for me. So therefore, no conflict of interest. If I was a contractor or doing business in contracting, there would be a conflict of interest. My thought on the four-way stop was just because it's a more straightforward, simpler solution. It didn't take any more thought. It didn't complicate things. People are used to normal four-way stops.
Yeah.
And I do believe that's a good idea because that area has grown up immensely. There was a handful of houses on Polycoff when I was a kid, and the Bunce development was a cornfield. So there are many, many more houses and much more traffic in that area. I'm not in favor of banning trucks in that area, and mainly for the simple reason is we would force more trucks onto other roads that already have more truck traffic than we do. And if it was better for the drivers and the trucks, they would already be taking that alternate route. I feel bad for people. Nobody likes a lot of truck traffic on their roads, but in that area, people had bought and built in an area that has 6 aggregate companies. Those aggregate companies have been there long before that area built up. The trucks have always been there. So I am not for banning the trucks, but I am in favor of the four-way stop.
So I may have misspoke or been, I don't want to necessarily say that I feel that a four-way stop is detrimental. What I heard was, the air braking and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in a position myself that I would, at this point, since nothing has been constructed yet, I would like to have that one corner I would propose that we have that one corner that was discussed squared off, so that it's not just a flying around the corner we go. But I would also think that possibly a first good step might be to put in the 4 stop signs, because that can be, make it a 4-way stop, only have to add a couple more. And I think there should be another stop added where you turn to the right. So you have to stop no matter what you're doing, square off that one corner and try that as a first step and see if that helps. And then if we need to, come back to another design. But I'd like to hear from anyone who wants to comment on this, particularly people who live in that neighborhood. Catherine?
Catherine Miller, 801 Clayton Road. 5 days out of 7, I walk 5 miles in that area. I go down Polikoff, down Allendale, all the way around. It's a big loop. My concern is the size of the trucks. There are those big concrete trucks from Century Acquisition that come wheeling up there at a mighty speed. There are huge log trucks that come riding up there at a mighty speed. I'm not concerned about farm vehicles. I'm not concerned about the local contractors. I'm just concerned about these big, heavy trucks. Seems to me there might be a thought about the weight that's allowed on a road. I don't know, but those guys really move. The 4-way stop is interesting, although I should like to say that in the last month I have almost been sideswiped by people who didn't stop in my car going down Clayton. They don't stop for the stop sign on Polikoff. So I almost got whacked twice now in the last month and a half. So maybe two more stop signs would slow that down, I don't know. But it's not very safe on that corner. And you're right, that right-hand turn when you're coming south on Polikoff to Clayton is a mess. I mean, even trying to walk across there, you're taking your life in your hands. But it's a tough spot, and you're in a tough position. But I really think you've got to look at maybe the weight of the trucks, and the speed at which they go is pretty fast. And then the optional stop signs, whatever. They're optional everywhere, I guess.
George, you had a comment to make too?
George Lane. I was just thinking that Bob's got the right idea. You start out with the stop signs, they're not going to cost you that much, whereas the reconstruction of that whole corner would be. And if it doesn't work anyhow, you spend all that money for what? Stop signs, let's try them and see what happens.
So, thank you. Anyone else? Barbara Martin, any? Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you dropped something.
I did both.
Or we're getting up.
Sari Hoy, Main Street. I had a brief conversation with the highway superintendent about the sleeping policeman / roundabout laugh we had at the last meeting. But what he said was, if you had like a circle in the middle, which isn't really a roundabout but a bump, if it was a low enough bump, it wouldn't be a problem for plows, or it would be much less of a problem for plows. And I just wondered if that actually is something that you could consider to do, because that nobody wants to go over that bump fast. They're maybe more likely to slow down for that than a stop sign.
I think that's something that can be considered. I know all of those raised bumps have to be removed when snow plowing comes along.
No, he was saying that they could work around. My impression was he was saying if it was built just so, they could work with it, but that's more conversation with him probably.
I think that may be more conversation that we need to investigate than trying to come up with something at this meeting that might be implemented. I wonder if there would also be potentially some, I know we've talked about a stronger police presence. I think that has to be part of this. And we do have some flexibility for those radar signs that we got under the Complete Streets grants that are being installed right now on Silver and Ranapo. We haven't found quite the right spot coming out of Ashley Falls Village. So I wonder if we should consider putting one of those signs on the speed radar. I know the chief had told me that if you got a speed radar sign and somebody's speeding and they're caught past that sign, they don't have much to go with because they've just been told they're speeding and they're still speeding. So the chief has told me that there probably would be more awareness of that speed on the part of the officer than if there was no speed sign to alert the person that they are in fact speeding. So I'm wondering if we should consider temporary or permanently reallocating one of those signs coming off of from Connecticut up Polikoff toward Clayton, because that seems to be the area where we're receiving the most concern. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's worth a try.
Catherine, you're the only person here from that neighborhood that I can see.
Are you looking for a comment?
Yeah, I think I am, yes. And if you're not comfortable, you don't have to.
It's worth a try. I mean, that you're correct. Between the Canaan line and that intersection is where the bulk of the traffic is.
And the bulk of the speeding.
And the speed, absolutely. And
Rhonda?
I wish I had a meter I could wear on my arm in the morning and catch these guys. Because I'll tell you,
I know.
it's wonderful.
All right. So, Rhonda, do you have any comments on that?
The only other comment that I would have is if you're worried about the Jake brake or the engine brake things, you could look into, you see signs on different roads that say that the use of those are not allowed in this area, so you could certainly investigate what it takes to put that up as well.
Well, I would think almost this might be a case where we should ask forgiveness rather than permission and put the sign up, and if there's complaints, then we take it down or do what we need to do, because I didn't in that. We'll have to look at that document that Martin talked about, but I felt that the signage on roads was under the control of the town for the most part.
It is, but I'm not sure about the use of those, whether that requires approval from Mass DOT or not. So I think
Okay.
that's a simple question.
Okay. All right, we can look into that. So kind of, if the board is willing to rescind its last motion and think of a new motion, then I think what I'm hearing is four-way stops. Every place you can turn a car on that intersection of Clayton and Polikoff gets a stop sign. Rounding off that one corner, squaring off that round corner, increasing the police presence, finding a good location for one of those solar-powered radar signs, and looking into, and if allowed, put a sign that's going to address the air braking issue.
I would make a motion as read or as discussed, conditional upon rescinding our prior motion for temporary improvements.
I'd second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, is there a motion to rescind our previous motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I will work with the chief, so let's dole out assignments. I'll work with the chief and Joe Wilkinson to find a decent location. I'll mark it with a stake and a flag, so Polikoff residents can see where it's going to be and comment through an email to Jill. All right, let's get that done this week, okay? And then, Rhonda, you've got conveying this to Jim and getting the signs. And does anybody want to volunteer to take the Mass DOT signage issue?
So is that to determine whether or not the mass?
We can do something that says no air braking in this neighborhood, or air braking.
I'll take that on.
Okay, so you've got that, Martin.
A small correction, it wouldn't be the air brakes. They all have air brakes. It has to have, that's the brake.
Okay, so
That's an
the
engine-
use.
No, engine.
Engine brake.
Engine brakes, okay, see,
Or
this is why I don't
some
take it.
people Refer to it as a Jake brake. but
Yes,
it
which is allowed.
It's an engine brake.
Yeah.
Right. That's that growl you'll
Yeah.
get when they are coming up.
Okay, so Martin's got that, okay. So let's see if we can't, I know holiday's coming up, but let's see if we can't, and I'll talk to the chief also about enforcement.
Okay.
Okay, are we good?
Good.
Thank you, board. All right, so, next we have several appointments. Let's start off with the Ashley Falls Historic District Commission. Rhonda, could you handle all of these for us,
I
Rhonda,
will.
please?
So for the Ashley Falls Historic District Commission, you have Maggie Carroll, who was announced, and you're now looking to appoint her.
Motion to appoint Maggie Carroll to the Ashley Falls Historic District Commission.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now you have the Housing Production Plan Committee. So you have an email from Nadine Hover, one from John James, and one from Dorothy Maffey, who are all looking for appointment onto that committee as well.
So we had talked about 7 members, and we're holding a spot for the Housing Commission to bring forward their nominee.
Yes, you are. There was a little confusion over the way that they made their recommendation to you. So after their next meeting, Thursday, they'll come back to the board
Right.
with their representative.
So I don't want to
on the
have us
housing.
appoint more people than we require. Anyone who's not appointed is welcome to attend. These will be open meetings. So where are we number-wise?
6. I have 6.
Well, currently you have 4 that
Okay, right, sorry.
have been. That's saving, the 4 includes the spot for the Housing Commission.
Okay, so we have 4.
Are you in agreement with
So we
that?
need a
Okay.
maximum of 3.
Correct.
Okay, and we have Nadine, John James, and Dorothy, is that
Maffey?
Maffey.
Maffey? Maffey, okay.
Okay. Okay, so theoretically, all 3 of these people could be appointed, and with the Housing Commission's person, we would be at 7.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure we don't
Yes.
appoint too many. All right, so what would the board like to do?
Do you want to announce these, wait for the recommendation from the housing, and just do it all at once at your next meeting?
So here's where we are. Our next meeting is going to be December. We could.
But you could also do it at a working meeting, if you wanted
we'll
to do it
probably
before
have,
December.
Let's announce this. I don't think we're going to have a meeting before Thanksgiving of this committee, and I don't think they'll be meeting until hopefully the first week in December, by which time we will have the Housing Commission formal nominee, and if we have a working session, we can announce that, because I would like to see if this board can start working
Yes.
in December. We have a lot to get done. So what does the board want to do? Does the board want to announce and appoint, announce and take this up at a working meeting? What do you want to do? I'm fine with any of those options.
I'm prepared to announce and appoint.
This has been in the Sheffield Times. Thank you, Sheffield Times. We got a number of comments of interest from that. Bob, where are you? What would you like to do?
I'll second Martin's.
Okay, so do you want to announce
Sure.
again?
I make a motion that we appoint John James, Nadine Hover, and Dorothy Maffei to the Housing Production Plan Committee.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I just have one. I just want to make you aware, that would be a quorum of the Housing Commission on this as well, so you would have to post both meetings.
3 would be the quorum for a 7.
3 more,
Sorry,
maybe 6 that would be appointed.
So separate the housing production
Well,
and the housing commission.
I am, yes.
So
So we
when you
have-
have a housing production committee, you'll have to post that meeting. Plus you'll also have to post a housing commission meeting because you'll have the majority of the housing commission
sorry, I
on your
misunderstood.
production committee.
Okay.
You two got that. Excellent, because that's your job. Excellent, okay. And we'll try to make sure that the three people that were just appointed, along with Frank, get their materials, and then we'll get the Housing Commission member taken care of as soon as possible, and then I think probably the first week in December will, however, I think, Rhonda, you usually call the first meeting, correct?
Oh, for the production committee?
Yes.
I certainly can. I can work with Martin to
Okay.
get that scheduled.
Great, and then we'll have Chris Brown from BRPC. Okay, all right, so we just have one more
Yeah.
appointment tonight.
So you're looking for 2 alternates for the Conservation Commission, and both of the people who had applied for the vacant spot on the commission have expressed interest to serve as an alternate. So that's George Oline and Anya Rossoff.
And they're both here tonight. Thank you both. Board members?
I would make a motion to appoint Anya Rossoff and George Oline as alternate members for the Sheffield Conservation Commission.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, excellent. All right, so our next item is, we had talked about at our last meeting, putting together a possible charge for the Housing Production Plan Committee, and I just drafted something to get the discussion started, and so I don't know, I've received some feedback from Chris Brown at Berkshire Regional Planning Commission on this, but I don't know if anyone has had a chance to look this over. It was after the announcements. It looks like this.
I looked at it and I can't find it now. Oh, thanks.
I don't know if you want to consider this tonight and whether you've had enough chance to see it or whether you'd like to put it off to our next working meeting or the one after that, since I know we have quite a bit on this Thursday's agenda. I don't want anybody to be rushed.
Right. I'd be happy to act on it. I'm just wondering whether it makes sense for me to read this since we have members that are part of the housing production plan.
Okay, if you
Here.
want to do that, I'm going to get a glass of water. Does anyone else want a glass of water?
Good, thanks.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so the draft for the charge for the Housing Production Plan Committee includes, number 1, developing a housing production plan for the town of Sheffield consistent with Mass Department of Housing and Community Development requirements. And all these documents would be provided to each of the committee members. Follow all the provisions of the open meeting law as it applies to this committee. We just discussed that briefly. And I'm happy to work with the members to ensure that that happens. Be sworn in by our town clerk before participating in community meetings or committee meetings. That's very easy. You go down and talk with Phyllis and she reads you the swearing in language. It's easy to do. But it is important to do that for a whole host of Massachusetts law reasons. Appoint a liaison to consult with the town administrator, Rhonda LaBombard, or her designee as needed. Encourage public comment, as does any established board, commission, or committee. Meet weekly whenever possible, either in person, over Zoom, or a hybrid combination to encourage as much participation as possible. If the committee wishes, update the select board and planning board of the committee's progress at scheduled select board meetings in January of 2022 and probably into February. As the town of Sheffield has no resources current or planned to directly implement the housing production plan, the committee is encouraged to include recommendations on area resources with whom the town could partner to implement the housing production plan. Produce a final report by February 18th, 2022. This report will be submitted to the Select Board and the Planning Board, which by law, both of those boards must approve it. Any changes that either the select board or the planning board would be made available for comment to the Housing Production Plan Committee members prior to final Housing Production Plan approval. And finally, following the Select Board and Planning Board approvals, the Housing Production Plan will be submitted to the Mass Department of Housing and Community Development for approval. And that's the charge for the committee.
We have a little bit more. That kind of last paragraph.
Oh, I'll read that.
Okay.
If the HPP committee in its work discusses other aspects of housing, such as recommended zoning bylaw changes to support additional housing, how to encourage first-time ownership, or how to increase home ownership in general, the Select Board and Planning Board would appreciate such information. Thank you for encouraging me to read that. So, personally, I would make a motion that we approve the charge for the Housing Production Plan Committee.
I'll second it.
Rhonda, do you have any comments?
I don't.
So we do have 2 members who have been appointed. Kathy, you have some comments?
Hi, just Chair of the Housing Commission.
Just have to name.
Kathy Orlando, Chair of the Housing Commission. I thought it would also be good in that charge, in addition to meeting the requirements for the state, to also be consistent with the Sheffield Master Plan, since there was a lot of thought that went into the master plan and how to make sure that that in addressing housing, we were also staying consistent with that.
Okay.
So I would suggest.
My concern is the master plan is 16 years old.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And life has moved on.
That's okay. The general framework is still applicable. Yeah. So I just think it's important to make sure that in what we're doing, we are being aware of the community of Sheffield and how the community has articulated it would like to grow, and there was a tremendous amount of work that was done there to think it through, and it was very consistent with all the smart growth principles and everything that the state does. So it should not be inconsistent. It just provides making sure that we're making recommendations that are relevant to Sheffield as opposed to just anywhere in the state of Massachusetts.
So everyone who is on the housing production plan has been given a copy of the summary of recommendations from the Sheffield Master Plan. I cannot support adding that as it was stated, because I do not want us to look backward necessarily. I don't want it to be a constraint. I want it to be an encouragement. And that's why when putting those materials together, the master plan recommendations were included. But it's 16 years old, and I would not like to have it become the document that governs what is needed in the housing production plan.
Well, could a statement be made to encourage considering the master plan? Because it is a town document that,
Well,
many...
To be honest, I would hope that the committee, of which I'm not on, would look at the work that the planning board has done, would look at the master plan, which is why it was given out to, being given out to people, and also potentially look at what has worked in other communities. But again, maybe the proper wording needs to be come together on this, but I think it's embedded in here that people are going to look at the documents, such as lot sizes and things of that sort, and the various land use specifications already in place for Sheffield, and make their recommendations either consistent or recommend changes to those to be able to support the type of housing that the community needs. But Martin, you look like you have a comment.
No, I agree with what you're saying. The master plan is quite dated. It's still a resource that the committee is going to use.
It should.
And help guide us. So I'd rather not amend my motion. I think.
Kathy, I think we understand what you're saying.
We do.
I think it's where the emphasis, and from what I understand, you will be the Housing Commission nominee, so you will all sort it out amongst yourselves.
Sari Hoy, I'm on the Housing Commission, but I'm going to be the planning board rep. I actually support using the master plan as a good reference. Everything that exists now, problem-wise, housing, in the housing realm, was the same, pretty much the same back then. Nothing much has changed in that way. And I think that the master plan is still a relevant document. But my interest, my point now is I'm a little concerned about, was it February the 18th to have a final document?
That's the objective,
Yeah.
according to the,
It just, that seems, with the holidays, that just seems very fast, and to get as much community input, that just seems, I would like it maybe to be a little bit longer.
I think if the committee found that that was not a possible date, they would come back. The select board nor the planning board, which has to approve this document, wants something not to be complete and not done. I think by putting this date in here, we're trying to stress the urgency of this, because there will be the next round of grant funding that could actually, and also with town meeting coming up in May, and the possibility of asking for certain funding from certain sources to encourage this type of work that the plan will produce. There is a certain timeline by which, if that's not met, it gets to go another
Sure.
period of time. So
Okay.
I think this is to encourage
Yeah.
movement rather than,
Dragging it out.
okay? And that's part of the reason why we'll have a facilitator from BRPC who was here the other night to introduce himself. These things can take a long time if you let them. We're not looking for, I think we're looking for a good plan, but I think everybody has a number of ideas as to how to produce that. The documents have been given out to many of the people already on this committee, and we're hoping that there will be timely progress made.
Okay, thank you.
You want to change the date?
I'd like to leave it as it is for now, and as the committee works, we will come back to you to let you know whether we can meet that deadline.
Works for me.
Okay, so what do you want to do with this? Do you want to modify it at all? You want to accept it? You want to think about it?
That looked good to me.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
We'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept this as drafted. Any further discussion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We do appreciate the comments. We are listening. We do appreciate them greatly. All right, so Martin, would you mind just taking the next item so I can report on it as our recycling coordinator?
Regarding the propane tank
Yes,
disposal?
yes.
I don't remember seeing anything in Mike.
There's not,
Yeah,
Renee's
I've got
gonna
it.
talk if you.
Oh, thank you. Now I understand what you're asking. I'm happy to do it.
Okay, so at our last meeting,
Could you please state your-
Renee Wood, thank you, Boardman Street. Thank you, as our recycling coordinator. At our last meeting, I brought up for the board's consideration the disposal of propane tanks. And in the meeting, there were several extremely good questions raised. So I went back to our supplier, sent him another email to his email that said he could take them, and asked him specifically the questions that were raised. Did he have a license to carry this? Did he really think he could take this? And was it going to have to be a separate container from the electronics container? So thank you very much, Frank. And he wrote back that he had made a mistake and that he could not take propane containers. So then, once again, the public got involved. In this case, it was, again, Frank, who located a place where empty propane tanks can be taken. And this was recently sent out in an email blast, kind of a transfer station update. But For those who may not be on the email blast, I would encourage you to go to the town's website. That's under the Selectboard, Rhonda?
I think it's on the bottom of the website, is it?
What's it under?
It's under the Selectboard.
Under the Selectboard, and sign up for the email blasts. But now empty propane tanks may be taken to the Lennox Valley Waste Transfer Facility at 64 to 68 Willow Creek Road in Lennox for disposal at no charge. Empty propane tanks include the typical barbecue 20-pound lifted up tank, as well as any portable stove tanks. You can just Google them, Lennox Valley Waste Transfer Station. Their website is there. They can give you the hours that they're open and also a map as to how to reach them. So that's the update. We're not taking propane tanks. There's a place to get rid of them for free when they're empty. And thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much, Renee. Appreciate it. Thank you for doing all that work and back and forth.
Well, it was just following Frank's lead, so
know. Thank you, Frank.
It's amazing how much the public is getting into this solid waste reduction and recycling, reuse, et cetera. So our next item is discussion possible action regarding a BSC proposal for Kelsey Road. Rhonda.
So it should say Kelsey Road and Lime Kiln Road over Hubbard Brook. It's a contract for both of those for the engineering for replacing those two bridges. This will be included in our MassWorks, our 2020 MassWorks application and grant that we received. So this is with BSC Group to handle the engineering for both of those bridges. So you'll see that they've provided an hourly schedule kind of towards the back. It's Exhibit B, but that the total for all of the work would not exceed $188,000, which is not coming from town funds. It's coming from the MassWorks. And some of the work will also be done by the Small Bridge program as well.
So what I'm hearing is that all of this is state or otherwise funded.
Correct.
Great work, Rhonda.
Yes.
She's our
you,
specialist and has brought in over, what is it now, $1.5 million, $2 million?
It's a couple million.
Yeah, at least on this. So Rhonda, you're looking for an approval for this contract
Yes.
and also authorization so that you can sign the documents?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the BSC Group proposal for engineering services and grant preparation services for Kelsey Road over Dry Brook and Lime Kiln Road over Hubbard Brook, and authorize Rhonda LaBombard to execute any agreements thereto.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Rhonda, would you handle the next one, which is discussion, possible action regarding heavy equipment bid award?
Yes. So we've been going out to bid with the town of New Marlborough together with them. And we had a contract with Joe Wilkinson Excavating to handle all of the bigger equipment needs that we might need for culvert replacements, grading roads, help with any type of thing that would require a truck, a driver, a laborer. So that contract is set to expire on November 30th. New Marlborough decided that we should separate, and they were going out on their own. They've already handled theirs. Ours was out to bid. We received one bid, and that came from Joe Wilkinson as well. Do you want me to read out what he has for each individual?
No, if anyone wants to see the particulars, just come to Town Hall when Town Hall is open and talk to Rhonda or Jill.
So we did open the bids on the 12th, and like I said, this was the only bid received, so.
So this was publicly advertised, so
Oh, yes.
other people could have bid if they wish.
Yes.
All right, what does the board wish to do?
I make a motion to accept the bid from Joe Wilkinson.
I will second that.
Could I just ask Rhonda, how long does this run for?
It's a one-year contract with the option to renew 2 times at 1 year each.
Okay, great. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have discussion possible action regarding Southern Berkshire Regional Emergency Planning Committee. Rhonda, we'll turn to you again.
So Sheffield is part of a 12-town committee, 12 members for the Southern Berkshire Regional Emergency Planning Committee. And so our annual invoice is $500, and it comes with an agreement, and it shows what they have completed in fiscal year 21, which was the collaborative with coordinating and running COVID vaccine clinics, responding to Regional Emergency Planning Committee for the pandemic response. They coordinated requests and delivered personal protective equipment regarding the pandemic. So these are some of the things that this committee does. They meet on a regular basis. And well, this is just for Sheffield's emergency contacts is on there. And so, as I said, we are one of 12. And so I'm looking for approval to pay, to continue to stay in this group and to pay the $500 that they're looking for.
I attend most of these meetings via Zoom once a month, and it goes far beyond this list of
Oh, it does. There's many more.
accomplishments.
I've
Yes.
selected a few.
So just as one of the people that can attend from Sheffield, I would really feel that this would be a good investment.
I agree. Make a motion to approve $500 payment to the Southern Berkshire Regional Emergency Planning Committee.
Second.
And Rhonda, can you sign this? Or do we need to authorize you to do that? I'm trying to figure out who signs it.
I'm not sure that we have to sign anything today other than
Just
sending
send
our
the money?
in.
Right.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And Rhonda, maybe, could you, or could Jill take charge of getting this contact list up to date?
We will, we'll take a look at it.
We'll take charge of it. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Next, we have a long agenda today. Our next item is discussion possible action regarding appointment of temporary sanitation inspectors, and I see that Pat Levine, the chair of the Board of Health, is here this evening.
I think Martin can handle this.
Okay, so Martin, if you're going to represent the Board of Health, I'm going to ask you to just leave the table so we're not confused as to which hat you're wearing.
I'm Martin Mitzoff, South Under Mountain Road, member of the Select Board, member of the Board of Health. This is sort of a formality that's being brought to the Select Board. It is a matter for the Board of Health, and the idea is that we are nominating Jane Smith to be an alternate for Scott Smith when he's not available to do Title V inspections. Jane is a certified licensed Title V inspector, as well as a regular witness to Title V inspections that are done throughout town as well as South County. So this is, again, it's an alternate position for her. And the temporary position is actually to request Jim Willis, who is the head of the executive director of Tri-Town Health, as well as our close colleague working with the Southern Berkshire Public Health Collaborative, to do one inspection on one property where we've had some issues with the property owner. I'd rather not disclose who that is, but Jim has offered kindly to attend as a Title V witness. Again, I don't see any need for the Select Board to take any action. The Board of Health has already addressed these matters, and I think I've described what the positions are. So, any questions?
I think the Board of Health has approval of, I think we generally approve.
I disagree, but the Board of Health has authority under Massachusetts law to appoint health agents to work on behalf of the Board of Health. There is no requirement for a Select Board decision whatsoever, and if you would like to take it to a motion for the Select Board, I'm just going to say that I will abstain from the vote because I don't think it's appropriate, but that's just my view.
So I thought that we had been generally appointing.
You appoint members to the Board of Health, but not in terms of any other appointments that I know of.
I thought we had been appointing the sanitation inspector.
I believe that we have in the past.
He's
Yeah.
also a member of the Board of Health.
Well, I know, but we didn't appoint him as a Board of Health and sanitation. We did it under two different, I thought we did that in July when we appointed everyone to whatever positions were open. And the sanitation inspector, I don't know whether it's a 3-year appointment, but I thought we've traditionally done that.
Every year, it's an annual.
So I'm just kind of curious as to why we would not be charged with appointing temporary inspectors. So
And that's-
maybe, I'm not sure that we can answer this at this point. So if you've got a citation from, we don't want to be overstepping our authority either. So if you've got that citation and you want to forward it to Rhonda, we'll just figure out who's supposed to appoint this person, okay? And I think that's probably the way that we can solve this issue. Does that sound fair?
Sounds good to me.
Pat?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we'll just have you forward that and then we'll go. So we're gonna table this for the time being, and we may or may not come back to it. So our next item is discussion possible action regarding employment, police department administrative assistant. Rhonda.
So our person who is doing the police department administration left several months ago, and we've had an ad out and looking for someone who might be interested in, 6 to 10 hours a week maybe to help out the chief. And so we have an application from Carolyn Ulrich, who would like to take on that position. And I recommend that the board appoint her the normal year probation period and see how things go.
I'd make a motion to appoint Carolyn Ulrich as the administrative assistant to the police department.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next, we have discussion possible action regarding a conservation restriction on Under Mountain Road. We have that packet in front of us. Kathy, are you here to comment or present this?
And to answer any questions you might have. So Kathy Orlando, changing my hat, Sheffield Land Trust. So this was probably over a year ago. We had first come to talk about this conservation restriction on Under Mountain Road. It is part of the ACEC, the Schnabruck area of critical environmental concern area. It's part of a larger land protection area where the Appalachian Trail is at the top, and the state has a number of protected lands in the area, as do a lot of other conservation organizations, because the limestone bedrock there makes for sweet soils, which a lot of plant species that won't grow anywhere else grow, which then means that the animals that like those sweet soils and those plants are there too. So that's one of the reasons that Sheffield has one of the highest concentrations of rare and endangered species in the state of Massachusetts. So anyway, this family, they are doing a huge bargain sale. They're basically donating the conservation restriction. There is a small payment being made that originally was going to come from the state land conservation tax credit, but there is such a huge waiting list there. It was going to take 2 more years before they could do this. And so, most families can't afford to wait that long. So we were able to go and get some foundation funding to be able to do that. That kind of helps cover the expenses that are related to doing this, because there are expenses that families incur. So, and this family has owned the land for hundreds of years and just wants to make sure that it's continued, to be able to do it in a wonderful way, no matter who owns it. So, so I just wanted to come and, it's taken a number of years to be able to do this, because there were a lot of things going on in the regular conservation restriction and conservation easement world related to the IRS that had to get worked out. There was a lot of changes going on, which have now been settled, so this family has been incredibly patient. And so we now are ready to be able to close. So the land trust has signed it, the family is in the process of signing it, And then the next stop would be for you guys to be able to sign it. So I just wanted to come and see if you had any new questions, and if not, I can leave this. And I know usually you like to sign things at a subsequent meeting, so I wanted to be able to come now, so that, you know, when you meet in December, that can be done, and then we can get it into the state, because it can't actually get recorded until we send it to the state. They sign it, they send it back to us, and then we record it, and then it's official.
Thank you.
You bet.
So, do any board members have questions on this?
No, not really. It's quite extensive. Quite a lot of reading.
I've barely started to get into it, Kathy, to be honest. It's probably the most extensive one that's come to the board when I've been on the board.
So it's basically
So-
the same, so the document is pretty much the same every time. This different, you know, what I can probably do is from year to year, as things change, I can maybe do, here's what the state has added, because Massachusetts is unlike any other state, where the state actually has a model and actually reviews things, and so they send us comments and say, okay, here's the new things that you have to be adding in, or, so what I could do is I can just say, hey, so here's what the difference is from, in general, from what the last one was. So it's pretty much consistent with what was there. The changes, the big change is in, it's called the limitation on amendment, which is what took so long, because it basically just says, if this ever were to be changed, there are still certain parts of this that cannot change. And that's, again, why everything took so much longer, because that was being settled kind of at the national level.
Martin, did you have any
I
questions?
have no questions. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay.
I did review the document, and it seems completely consistent with what you presented to us last year, so.
Yeah.
So Kathy, is this document ready for signature?
It
Or
is.
there's
Yes.
no more changes going
more
on
changes,
unless
no.
the state comes back?
Right, no, this is
That's
from the state. The state actually sent a PDF saying, this is what you get signed.
So this is it?
This is
Nobody's
it.
going to be changing
This is it, yeah. So,
Okay.
and Susan Rothschild for the Land Trust, our president, has signed it. The landowners are signing it. So as soon as you guys are ready, you can sign it, and then I can get all of those to the state. We now email everything to the state because mail is so unreliable.
Something I always get asked on
Yep.
conservation easements.
Yep.
Do you have any sense of what the tax impact of this is?
It shouldn't be very much. We had talked with Tammy initially, because it is actually backland. There's one lot where you could put another house, but the vast majority of the 14 acres is mountainside and it's ledge. So there probably could have been maybe one other house, but it's really backland, and so she said that the impact should not be much.
Okay, Rhonda, can you check with Tammy on that? Okay, I have to admit, I've started reading this, I've actually read it once. I have to go back,
Totally.
okay, and read it. So I'd like to see if we could put this on our next full meeting agenda, okay? Is that all right with the board?
That's fine with me.
Okay, Bob, all right, and we'll have that information. So that'll be the first Monday in December.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm going to leave,
all right.
I did a printout that has one of the signature pages. I'll send the others as they come in, so that in December you'll have all of those.
Great.
As well as being able, if you have any questions, I'll be back.
Okay, wonderful, thank you, Kathy.
Gotcha.
All right, next, we have a discussion, possible action regarding approval of a letter to Governor Baker regarding Chapter 90. So I had talked about this at a previous, I think, working session, or maybe it was our retreat, but this kind of tied into some of the discussion that we've had with Chapter 90 and Smitty and his proposed bill. And Smitty made the comment, well, the governor could probably just change the whole Chapter 90 formula because there seems to be no evidence of how it ever got started. So I just figured it was easier to write a letter to the governor and just ask him to do it. So that's what this letter is about. And I've CC'd Senator Hines and Representative Smitty. And I just wanted to see if the board had a chance to review this, had any changes to it, and or was ready to either put this off to a working meeting or approve it.
I'd be willing to approve it.
I'm willing to approve it. I have one minor change. I think
Okay.
it's perfect. Thank you very much. In the third paragraph, the first sentence, the second, or the auditor bump, it should be possessive hyphen.
Great, let's give that, yeah, thank you. And we'll have all three board signatures, okay?
Yes.
So who wants to make the motion and who wants to make the second?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you. The next item, which was discussion possible action regarding a letter to the legislature regarding ARPA funds. I just couldn't quite put myself into it, so I'd like to pass over that. I'm not sure that I disagree that much, and I'm not sure that adding another yes to it's going to make any difference.
You're talking about the letter that was drafted for the ARPA COVID?
That's going to be under board items because that's a new letter. Okay.
Oh, I missed it.
All right, so that'll be under board items. So let's go to board items. Martin, do you have any board items?
Just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. There should be no hugging and no kissing and when family get-togethers. Just teasing. Just kidding. Just kidding. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Be safe.
Yes, Bob.
Happy Thanksgiving. Go ahead and kiss and hug. Go ahead.
I was thinking the humbug had come early. I add my happiest of Thanksgivings. I really think we deserve this one, and I hope it's going to be very special for all of our residents and Sheffield and Ashley followers. So I have one other item, and that is the letter. I was reading some mail this weekend, and MMA has sent out a note urging people to look into this proposed little amendment to the state's COVID recovery bill, and it prompted me to include two things in your packet. One was the call to action from MMA, all right, and then the second was kind of my interpretation of what was attempting to go on. I'm concerned about this, and time is precious, in that it is attempting, Martin, you know all about this, don't you?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay, all right. Bob, let me just give you mine. Yeah, it's in there somewhere. We had a very big packet today. It's basically attempting to, in my view, not build on the work of a special commission that was designed and founded in 19 and reported out on how to build public health strength in the state of Massachusetts, where every municipality gets to do it on its own. We have more boards of health, public health agencies in the entire state of California. And the first was, as I believe, to put an infrastructure in place, which I know our Board of Health is pursuing right now, and then to move them up to what they call foundation level, which is a pretty big two-step process. This little amendment that's been stuck into this COVID recovery bill would make it happen all at one time, and basically would provide state funding for this if it were allocated annually. Now, we went through this a number of years ago with the Transportation Fund, Chapter 70. Not to say they do it again, but they allocated it for a couple of years, and towns like Sheffield have been paying a tremendous amount of money for school transportation ever since. So there is no guarantee that this is not going to be basically an unfunded mandate, which could not happen without a full-fledged financial report of the implications and costs to the town. So that's kind of the gist of it. I added a couple of things as to why we strongly oppose this and why we respectfully urge them to remove this amendment from the bill. So I'm kind of, if this were to be approved, amended or not by the board tonight, I would hope it would be signed tomorrow, and then I will email it to every legislator since I have their addresses, and we just get it out and kind of flood them and see if we can put our stake in the ground. It's not that I oppose going to the foundation. I don't like the way this is being done. It should be a full discussion of a open legislative process and bill where all of the stakeholders can have their say and funding issues resolved, rather than sticking it in as an amendment to a very large bill. You want to add anything?
I completely agree with your sentiments on this and with MMA's sentiments on it as well. Thank you very much for drafting the letter. And I completely agree. I mean, it's an unfunded mandate, and it's been shoehorned into legislation that doesn't allow the appropriate basis for 351 separate boards of health in the state of Massachusetts to weigh in with their select boards and with their town executives to determine how to do this. So I would make a motion that we approve this letter. There is a minor amendment that I have on the first page, which I'll give to Ron.
You give it to Rhonda.
Just a typo error.
I always can count on you. Thank you. Bob, how about you?
I'm good with it, yes.
Would you like to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And hopefully we can all come in tomorrow and we can get it signed so that we can get this to them and have some impact. I do know that these letters make a difference.
They do.
I do know that people look at them and become aware of things. So we have no other board items? Town administrator items?
I just want to remind everyone that we'll be closed, of course, Thursday and Friday next week. And please keep in mind that we're closed to the public on Wednesday. So if you're looking to speak with anyone at Town Hall, you should do it on Monday or Tuesday of next week.
Okay, that's it? So let's go to public comments. Jim, you have your hand up? And thank you for waiting patiently.
Boy, it's hard to understand all this mumbling and mumbling, but what can we do? Jim Larkin, 174 West Road. I was thinking back when I was going to school here that I had a really good history teacher, Mrs. Rohrbeck, and she told us about Sheffield's history, especially Mumbet. I remember that, even though I wasn't probably the best student. I wish I was better in that subject at that time, but she did it. So as far as I'm concerned, this recognition is way overdue, and Mumbet really made an impact on progress of the country. But I'm here to represent the horses. They don't have a voice. And, yeah, you're confused, purposely. Anyway, my pet desire has been to have this spot out here look the way it was when George was going to school, when I was going to school, you know, way back in the 50s, and probably for 100 years or 150 years before that. The waterer is tucked under the tree. When the green apparently was reworked, they never put the water back where it was. And the water is tucked under a tree out there like it's masquerading as a flower pot. And if you go to Stockbridge, they got their waterer out front. It's about as prominent as the Red Lion Inn. Now, I wish ours was put back where it was. Not a big deal, but this is one of those while you're at it deals, and if not when, and not now, I mean when. And you have this project going, and all it probably would require is a cement pad, and you're gonna have, you know, people that are qualified to move that water. And it doesn't have to be a big thing, but I would hope that you would do that, I mean, as this project. Not to detract from Mumbet, but you've got a project going.
So Jim, I will say that it's hard for me to hear with the mask on, okay? So you're requesting that we move the water fountain?
See that? The horse water was prominent, like I would assume they had one in every town.
So you want a water trough for the
We
horses?
already got it.
Jim,
It's set under a tree.
Right.
I took Catherine, and Catherine's not here. I had to take her out and look at it one night
It's out there.
months ago.
You just don't, it's not in a prominent location that people notice it, and he's asking that.
It was when I was growing up, and probably for 100 or 150 years before that, it was on the north end of the green. It goes up there.
One on the north and one on the
Was there one on the south too? See, that's
Is that what we
me.
plant flowers in?
They're now used as, the last time they were used as planters.
Okay,
They were.
yes, so there's one
They
going,
look like they were 5-foot bathtubs.
there's one that's going south right across from the Verizon, right in the area of the
There's
Verizon.
one there, and there was one at the north end of the green too.
So we have lost one? There's only one left, or are there two?
There used to be two.
But there's only one now.
Yeah, there's one now, I mean, you know what Stockbridges look like.
Oh, yes, they had the beautiful, yes, yes, yes.
I took a look at it the other day, it had 1881 on it, and it's pretty well kind of deteriorated. Ours is still in pretty good shape. I mean, to me, it's a historical gem, and it's just being wasted.
So, Jim, I'm just, I don't know if you have watched Paul O'Brien in action, but
If I
watched Paul O'Brien. I don't know if you've watched Paul
Yeah.
O'Brien in action, but you have registered that with us right now. That's on DOT land, but it's probably the town's. I would encourage you to have a conversation with Paul O'Brien
I will, yeah, I'm hoping to
and see if you can get the Historical Society interested in this.
Well, the commission is meeting, I know it's down on the board, the commission is meeting tomorrow night. I thought I'd go to there. The reason why I bring it up, because
Okay.
if you don't start this process going, it's never gonna happen.
was not
And
even-
you already have this
know-
project here, that's the reason why, otherwise
Yeah, no, we appreciate it. It's obvious that some people know about it. I'm totally ignorant. I always thought, what was that? Because it's a heck of a flower planter. Now I know, out of ignorance, because I wasn't born here, that it was a horse trough.
Well, I'm sure it was throughout New England. I mean, we're lucky to have ours, and Stockbridge is lucky to have theirs.
Yes, yes.
And like I say, I want to speak up for the horses. If you want to think back what horses did for you and I and the rest of mankind, hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of years advanced us, I would hate the thought if they weren't around.
Yeah, so you're bringing this up at the Agricultural Commission?
No, he's talking about the historical commission.
Oh, the Historical Commission, fine, but also bring it up with the Historical Society, they're two different organizations, okay, wonderful, thank you, Jim. Excellent, thank you. Anyone else?
Sorry.
You mentioned that there's going to be a moderator for the HPP and that they introduced themselves?
Thank you.
You mentioned that there was going to be a moderator for the HPP committee meetings?
No,
Oh, I thought that's what you said.
no moderator?
I thought that's what she said.
You have a facilitator for the,
Facilitate, oh, sorry, so a facilitator, sorry.
a facilitator.
Ask.
I'm sorry if I
It's
misspoke.
okay. So who is the facilitator?
The facilitator is Chris Brown. He was here a couple of I think last meeting, maybe?
No, it couldn't have been the last meeting because I was there. Okay.
Okay, so go on CTSB and look at the video recording for the previous meeting. I think he was close to the start. Okay? All right?
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? George?
Yeah, George Olane, Foley Road. Two questions. What's the difference between a working meeting and a select board meeting?
Anybody want to take that?
According to the open meeting law.
There is no difference.
There is no
They're all selectmen's meetings. The working meetings are not televised.
No, wait, they're not televised.
Right.
That's what you said, right, sorry.
And 2 years ago, prior to pandemic, you told this gentleman, Mr. Larkin, that you were going to get a U-shaped table so nobody's back was to the audience.
I wasn't on the board when that was discussed.
Pardon?
I was not on the board when that was discussed, and I don't...
Yes, you were.
I'm sorry, George.
And you were the one that said it. But anyhow, all the training sessions I've been to where you're supposed to have meetings, they've always stressed that if you're in a long room, the presenters are at the narrow side of the room. So in other words, your table would be over there so that you are completely facing the audience that you are supposedly representing. And, this way, no matter how you sit, somebody's back is to the audience, which is not right.
May I comment on that?
You certainly may.
So we, as you probably remember, George, we had a number of discussions when COVID started out and really put a crimp on things about trying to be more open and more receptive. And we decided that rather than buying a new U-shaped table and separating the room and putting the entire crowd in one area, that this would be a better way of being able to approach the audience and the audience approach us. Yes, there are unfortunately situations where people's backs are to the audience. That's not intended or meant in any way, shape, or form to be an insult to those individuals, but this is in a sense a working group working with the public, and our working meetings are similarly structured in the sense that there's a lot of business that we three select board members, as well as our town administrator and the assistant to the administrator, have to deal with that we can't deal with in necessarily once every 2 weeks with a regular evening select board meeting.
So, George, what are your other comments, please?
Years ago, before the last, about 10 years ago, the select board met every Monday night at 7 o'clock, okay? Unless it was a holiday, and then they met the following day. One could come into a select board meeting and not have to come down to the town hall here and look at the board to find out when the next meeting is going to be or what's going to be on the agenda. You knew Monday night, 7 o'clock, select board meeting. And usually by word of mouth, you found out what was generally going to be discussed, and if you were interested in the topic, you came in, But with you meeting a couple of nights a month on a Monday night at 7 o'clock, and the rest of the time during the day, and unless you're retired, you don't have the opportunity to go, even if you're interested in the topic that's being discussed, and that's not right.
Thank you for your comments, George.
Bless you.
Any other public comment? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming this evening.
You all.
This ends our meeting.